This is Siwing Yi. My special guest is Richard Advani from Guaranteed Rate Mortgage, an investment loan agent who's been helping investors finance their properties purchases in all 50 states. I've done it for a very long time. Richard Advani, thanks for attending. Today, we're going to talk about house hacking. Yes, house hacking. Very interesting subject. Without further ado, let me go through the first three slides real quick. And then I'm going to go to a one case sample of a property that will be in a house hack. Richard will put on his investment loan agent hat and underwrite that property, go over the numbers because many house hackers do not understand the numbers associated with house hacking. Right now, let me go over real briefly the big picture, the tremendous pros of house hacking. Here are the potential strategies. A house hacker is potentially a primary home buyer. We're not talking about investor. Primary home buyer using a primary home loan. So there are four potential scenarios for house hacking. The first scenario I do not like that much, but the remaining three scenarios I love. First scenario, you buy a single family home with a primary home with 5% down or 10% down, whatever. Live there for 1 year and then move out and rent it out. House hack that way. The second scenario is buy 2 or 4 units, a duplex, triplex, or fourplex with a conventional loan, whatever down payment. And the third and the fourth scenario I love the most, which is as a house hacker, you buy 2 to 4 units using a 3.5% down payment FHA loan. Okay, and live in one unit and rent out the other units. And the last scenario, I personally have done it over the years because I'm a ex-military veteran, retired 20-year service, U.S. Army, buy 2 to 4 units using 0% down VA loan for a primary home buyer. The question is, what is your goal? Do you want to be a landlord? Can you deal with all the headaches associated with being a landlord as a house hacker? Are you willing to do the work? Are you committed? Are you disciplined? Do you have the efforts to go through the process? Can you qualify for the house you are buying 1 to 4 units? The critical point is people have not addressed often enough is where you live determines whether you can house hack successfully. The numbers, the quote unquote numbers may not work out, which Richard will go over momentarily. So the question is, if the area that you live in does not make sense numerically to house hack, are you willing to move to another area of the country where the numbers does make sense? The next scenario you need to understand is, of course, you have to buy it as a owner-occupied buyer. You have to physically live in one of the units for at least a year. Of course, you always surround yourself with a trusted team, a loan agent, a real estate coach, mentor, guidance consultant. When you can become a serial house hacker, that is mind-boggling how this is possible. You can buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex every year indefinitely, as long as you're in the right market, you learn, you educate yourself, and you take action. And then down the road, you can become very rich. Let me go to one very interesting scenario. This is an example, potentially a real example. Doesn't matter what market, although it's in Texas. Let me give you an example. The possibility, if you do the numbers correctly, for house hack, you're going to house hack this $1 million fourplex. You live in one of the units, so one of the units is not being rented. The other 3 units are rented at $2,000 per month. In this case, I'm using a VA loan, 0% down. I could similarly use a 3.5% FHA loan as well for this primary home buyer. Go through the monthly debt service, taxes, insurance, everything else. Go through the vacancy factor and maintenance factor. Once you live in there, because you're getting like 0% down VA loan as a primary home buyer, you have to pay 6.5%. So your monthly mortgage is $6,519. Obviously, if you buy a single family home, you have to qualify. Your income have to be a lot higher to qualify. But the underwriter will factor in the 3 other units being rented for a total of 6,000. At the end of the day, your monthly negative cash flow is $3,600. So the question is, how does a investment mortgage loan agent such as Richard Abaning right here? So now is your turn to go over how are you going to underwrite this loan? The monthly negative cash flow is $3,645. The mortgage payment total is $6,519. So, Richard, from a mortgage loan perspective, there you are. I know you have done this before, I'm sure. So, what kind of buyer can qualify to buy this home? A primary home buyer getting a FHA loan at a 0% down payment loan, giving this monthly negative cash flows and the mortgage payment, and how can somebody house hack this type of fourplex and make it work? Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we've done obviously tons of scenarios like this over the last 16 or 17 years, and it is a very popular way to enter the real estate investment world, but do it strategically. And the good thing is doing something like this and leveraging a multi-unit versus a single family home allows you to do a couple of things, right? One, it allows you to participate in a market where normally you would not be able to because of income, right? So a lot of times making $100,000 these days doesn't even get you enough money to buy, or isn't enough money for you to qualify to buy a house in a major metro, right? So what are your options? Sit on the sidelines and do nothing, buy an out-of-state rental property, or, as you put it, house hack. And the way that works is you have the ability to use the rental income coming in from those other units, right? If you're buying a 4-unit or a 2-unit, you're not going to occupy all the units. So you actually have the ability to use that income from those other units to offset the mortgage payment on it now. And all of a sudden you get a huge bump in income because now you're going to be a landlord and have income coming in from these 3 units. And all of a sudden you now qualify for a much higher purchase price than you would have qualified for otherwise. Let's say before your lender told you, okay, you can buy something in the $600,000 range for a single family primary home. Now, a lot of times you'll be able to push into that $1 million+ range because of that additional rental income. And then, of course, it allows you to be a part of the growth and appreciation of this property with minimal to no investment, depending on whether you qualify for a VA or an FHA loan. Now, when you subsequently redeploy this product, right? So let's say you buy a 4-unit, you live in a unit, you rent out the other 3 units, and a year to 2 years from now, you're ready to repeat. One thing to note is there has to be still some sort of tangible benefit as far as the underwriter is concerned for this new purchase, right? For example, if you owned a quad or 4-unit that was 20 miles away from your work, and a year and a half later, you're like, hey, you know what? I want to buy one that's 2 miles away from my work. Or I want to buy one that's a little more expensive and has more curb appeal or is a little bigger. Those things actually will make sense, of course, to an underwriter as well. There has to be kind of a natural progression, though, in terms of the asset type you're buying to warrant why you're actually going to move and why this is going to be a primary home. And the good thing is, for most of us as investors, that's what we do anyways, right? You buy that first home as your primary. It's a stepping stone, right? Every time you buy, you're going to upgrade, which also is conducive to getting approved for loans. As Siwing mentioned, this is a primary home product, so you have to occupy the property for at least a year afterwards in order to not be committing mortgage fraud. But it's a great way to obviously buy units. I always recommend to people that don't own a primary home to put your personal desires to the side and be strategic about your purchases. And what I mean by that is all of us want to go buy a big, beautiful primary home as our first home, right? However, if you go buy a $1.5 million single family home as your primary home, it's going to be very difficult to convince an underwriter that now you want to go buy a quad and you're going to move into one of the units, right? You're starting here and you're going down. However, if your first purchase is something like, say, a quad, right? A small quad or a duplex, it makes it very easy to say, hey, you know what, I want to upgrade to a bigger quad. And from there, hey, you know what, I may want to upgrade to a small single family. And from there, hey, I may want to upgrade to a bigger single family, right? So there has to be this progression that kind of makes sense and this improvement in what you're buying. It's almost impossible to go the other way. And that's why I'm saying, as a new purchaser, we don't own a primary home. If you can be patient for 3 or 4 years and not go buy that dream home right away, you're going to be able to establish a very good sized real estate portfolio with overall relatively minimal investment as well.
Yeah, there's a very good explanation that most house hacker, they don't get this kind of value add explanation from you. So getting back to that fourplex, because one unit is not rented out because that person is living there. So you have a monthly negative cash flow like more than 2,000, but the mortgage payment is more than 6,000. So what or how much one have to make income-wise, monthly or annually salary to qualify for the case analysis I just did on that fourplex?
Firstly, you need to pull it back up, and it'll take me a little bit to do those calculations. I can do them. A big variable on that's going to be, of course, what the existing debt load of that particular person is. Because, of course, in order to calculate debt to income ratio, we look at the proposed payment of the house plus the individual's debt, credit cards, car loans. So for this example, let's assume they have no debt, right? No car loans, maybe a minimal credit card. And of course, they're trying to buy this home. So the important thing to note, of course, on this example, I think is the total overhead I think you have on it is the mortgage payment is, where was that?
$6,519.
Okay, exactly. And the gross rent on the property is $6,000, right? Now, we're going to take, in the mortgage world, we take 75% of the estimated market rent, and we can use that to offset the actual liability. So 75% of $6,000 puts you at about $4,500, right? Positive usable rental income that can offset that $6,500 mortgage payment. Now, traditionally, let's say this was a single family home, right? For $1 million with a $6,500 payment. The conventional world allows you to go almost up to a 50% debt to income ratio, which means to qualify for a house with a $6,500 payment, you need to make at least double that every month pre-tax. So to be safe, if this was a single family home, you would need to make $15,000 a month pre-tax to be able to qualify for the loan. Now, given that it's a multi-unit creating income, the overhead of the property is $6,500. The net rental income based on the 75% is $4,500. So what's the delta there? It's about $2,000 a month delta.
Right.
As you can imagine, once again, at a 50% debt to income ratio, you need to make $4,500 to $5,000 a month now to qualify for the same property that you would have needed to make $15,000 a month to buy. And you know what's interesting there, as you heard, I'm sure there's a lot of you watching this who's I make more than $5,000 a month, right? But you've never looked at something like this. You're like, I can't buy $1 million property. My mortgage guy said I can't qualify for a $400,000 property. And that's where the house hacking part of it comes into play, right? Now all of a sudden you triple the amount you qualify for. And also you're making an investment with these other units that are going to cover your home. And then also, obviously, keep in mind, if and when you move a year, 2 years, 3 years later, now you're going to have 4 units that are rented out, right? You're going to be generating an actual positive return on that asset for minimal down.
Wow, Richard, this is great information. Very rare any potential house hacker getting this type of content and value add coming from you, the horse's mouth, which is very insightful, very value add, if I had to say so myself. So let me get the recap. If this $1 million homes were a single family home, primary home purchase, one, because the mortgage payment is $6,500, one would need $15,000 a month gross salary, W-2 most likely, multiplied by 12 months, one would need $180,000 to qualify as a standalone single family home, 1 million. But being a house hacking, the fourplex $1 million, giving the rent, but they'll cover some of the mortgage. As I understand you, one can only need around like $8,000 monthly, like $100,000 salary to qualify to house hack these fourplex based on the numbers. Is that what I hear? I think I'm
Based on the numbers you gave me, even less. They could potentially qualify at $70,000 a year in that example, assuming a $6,500 overhead on that property and obviously $6,000 a month in rent.
wow, this can get someone really excited about this. 70 to 80 grand, assuming someone having good credit history, does not have any other significant consumer debts, with the DTI debt to income ratio around 50%, 70 grand, someone can house hack this great, amazing fourplex. As opposed to a single family home, you need 180 grand to buy a single family home standalone with a VA loan or FHA buyers. So is that the big picture? Is that how I understand you of what you just said?
Yes, absolutely is.
Wow. This is, Richard, I'm sure you agree. This is powerful information. Once again, you came through with some value add that a lot of house hacker or anybody out there that may not be aware of. This is possible. And of course, one needs some additional cash reserve. One would need 6 months of PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance to qualify. And also they have to have some additional cash reserve to qualify for this kind of house hacking type loans. Of course, one credit score need to be around 720 or higher. And also, you can't buy this kind of fourplex in California, for example, or in many parts of the country. It's very hard to find any kind of multi-units in a good location. All those variables comes into play for those house hackers out there. So it's much more to it. Like I said earlier at the beginning, it all depends on house hacker, where do you live, where do you potentially want to move to make this kind of situation realistic and possible. Wow, great information. I'm glad you're able to dive deep into these kind of scenarios. Any one last recap on this before we conclude?
Get creative, right? If you're in a position where you make a decent income and you've been priced out of the immediate market that you live in, don't go buy a Porsche because you give up, which I've heard people do. I know people that rent apartments that drive Lamborghinis. Welcome to Southern California. And when I ask them, and it's probably not a real answer why, but I'm like, why don't you buy a house or something? They're like, oh, I tried for years and got priced out. So I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to just rent an apartment and now I've got that extra money. I'm going to be stupid with it. That's not what they say. That's what I'm saying. However, there's an alternative, right? House hack, buy a multi-unit, or buy out of state. Buy something that creates an income. Lamborghini does not create income. So I know that's not all of us out there, of course. If you have been on the sidelines just because you're priced out, take action. It's better than inaction. It's better than money in the bank. House hack, buy something an hour away from you where you normally wouldn't buy, or buy an out-of-state investment property because those are something that are within your price range and your budget. And look, I'm not dogging on people that rent. For a lot of people, it's a financial decision. It makes more sense to rent versus buy, versus given where rents are versus purchase prices. If you rent and you don't own, but you own 8 or 10 other properties right across the country, then, that makes you feel nice inside.
I totally agree. You and I have the same philosophy. Thank you so much. Once again, Mr. Richard Benny from Guaranteed Rate Mortgage. This is CWU. Thanks for attending. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.